Hey there and welcome. It's Jessica Drummond here from the Integrative Women's Health Institute. And today I want to talk about the flu. So I have been texting with at least four of my immediate friends in the last 3 weeks, giving them my solutions, nutritional solutions for preventing, for recovering faster from the flu. And I found out today, my youngest daughter came home from school today and said that only 9 kids were at school today in her class because all of the rest of them tested positive for flu. So it's rampant in our neighborhood, in our community school. 2 of the boys at the bus stop had it a week ago. So, and the flu this year seems to be taking down just kids and adults who have been strong for decades. And for some reason, the flu is taking them down. So I wanted to share with you the nutritionist approach to preventing, ideally, and if we can't prevent, then recovering from the flu quickly and more easily. And much of this information actually holds true for many different viruses. It's just that right now, my home is surrounded by the flu, so this is what's on my mind. Hey, Rebecca. Hello. Good to see you there. So please type in the chat box if you have any specific questions about the flu. In the meantime, I'm going to share with you the biochemical and sort of nutrition approach, and then some resources that we use literally in my own home to prevent or recover more quickly from flu and similar viruses. So the first thing to understand about the flu and other viruses is that they cannot replicate, they can't reproduce without using the machinery of your cells. So we have the ability to actually hijack that reproduction process by inhibiting or at least modulating some of the proteins that the flu uses. It actually integrates into your own cellular mechanics to integrate. And additionally, what's interesting about the immune system is that when it is inflamed, so when you're walking around with a lot of inflammation, the targeted inflammation to actually fight a virus or a bacterial infection is less precise. It actually becomes less targeted. So that's a bit counterintuitive. You would think that if you were generally more inflamed, that potentially your body would be ready and able to fight viruses and bacterial infections more easily. That's actually not true. It's the complete opposite. So as you become more inflamed, your immune system is constantly upregulated. And so its precision to attack a specific invader like the flu virus is actually compromised. So step 1 is to actually optimize the resilience of your immune system by generally lowering your inflammatory load. And there are a number of things that can do this. So the first thing that I always do when we are kind of at risk for a viral infection is to eliminate for our family or dramatically reduce any foods containing dairy, gluten, or especially sugar, because all 3 of those, and essentially all people, but the vast majority of people, are inflammatory. So if we lower that inflammatory load, then we are kind of giving less support, a less friendly environment for the virus to thrive. Second, we want to make sure we're actually eating 8 to 10 servings of vegetables per day and a couple of fruits as well, 1 to 2 servings of fruits. And that combination is optimal unless you have something like a yeast overgrowth, and that's a whole another story. So for now, focus on adding vegetables primarily and a couple of fruits, ideally fruits that are low glycemic and high in antioxidants, such as berries or green apples. Organic apples are key. So what we want to be thinking about, and again, these are anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. Now, what the antioxidants are doing is actually protecting the mitochondria in your cells, which are doing a lot of work. So remember, if you remember from Biology 101, the mitochondria are the energy powerhouses of the cell, and they have to do a lot of work when there's infection that the cells are fighting off. And so, or these cells are being overtaken by infection. So to protect the mitochondria and allow them to continue to do their job, we have to have a high load of antioxidants. And the best and easiest way to get that is through eating a lot of vegetables and a few fruits each day. So roughly 8 to 10 servings of vegetables, 1 to 2 servings of fruit. Now, hey, if you've been eating 1 serving of vegetable and you amp that up to 5, that is going to make a dramatic improvement as well. The third thing is hydration. So once we've lowered the inflammatory load, we've amped up the antioxidants, then we want to be sure that the system is hydrated, because you can't process and eliminate unless you're having a daily bowel movement, unless your liver has the support it needs with those nutrients, but also via hydration to support bowel movements to get rid of all the metabolism that's going on in your immune system as it, strongly fights off this invader. So from a basic nutrition standpoint, your grandmother was absolutely right. Drink chicken soup, broth. You can use filtered water. You can use herbal teas. You want to aim for about 40 to 60 ounces of fluids, not caffeinated and not alcohol for adults. And for kids, think about what their body weight is, divide that in half, and that's roughly a good guideline for how much fluid they should be taking in each day. That may seem like a little too much. Just get close to it. And honestly, the data shows that as long as you're not thirsty, you're getting enough fluid. But stop for 1 second and notice, are you thirsty? Probably. And you've been taught since kindergarten to ignore that urge. So we have to retrain that urge as well, so we can just remember when we're even thirsty. So 40 to 60 ounces is a good guideline. And I've written all of this in a post for you that I will link to at the end of this video. So we are anti-inflammatory eating. We're filling our bodies with antioxidants. Now, this is a tool that has worked for me for the past 15 years. It's cheap, it's easy, it doesn't taste great, but it is powerful. So you might be surprised to learn that raw garlic is powerful antibacterial and antiviral medicine and anti-yeast. So this was originally introduced to me by a doctor of mine when I got a sinus infection when I was nursing my first daughter. And she was like, hey, I can give you antibiotics for this, but it's not great for nursing moms. So what I suggest that you do is take 2 minced cloves of garlic a day. So take 2 cloves in the morning and 2 cloves in the evening. You have to chop them up, mince them, blend them. They have to be broken up. So 2 cloves twice a day for 3 days. And I kid you not, that blew out that sinus infection. I was perfectly fine in 3 days. So ever since, and I've done a lot more research on the benefits of garlic. I have used garlic for the first signs of any cold, flu, virus. And the way we eat it, because it's a little rough to mince it up and then just chug it in water. Although if you're very sensitive to sugar, that's the best way to do it. Just kind of take a deep breath and chug that minced cloves of garlic just twice a day for a couple days, 3 to 5 days. So you can survive this. If you can't do that, or your kids won't do it, what I do is either blend the 2 cloves of garlic into a green smoothie, or just a little bit of orange juice, or I chop it up and put it in the orange juice and chug it that way. So yes, Rebecca, raw garlic is like the foundation, and it's very inexpensive and readily available. So my Italian grandmother was right about that, and the chicken soup. That's excellent. Now, we have to make sure we're having bowel movements, hydration. We talked about that because we've got to be processing and metabolizing everything that your immune system is fighting off. So if you're constipated, it may actually be more difficult for you to fight off the flu. So in that case, you may need some magnesium supplementation or Epsom salt baths, or just plain more water and more vegetables, which is where I would suggest beginning. I also suggest turning off all blue light devices. Now, if you have the flu already, just be using them very sparingly and only during daylight hours. But if you're not sick yet and you're wanting to prevent the flu, we want to be turning them off by 9 p.m. so that you can give yourself at least an hour to settle down for a bedtime routine, get a really good night's sleep. And when you're awake during the day, you want to be exposed to daylight for at least 30 minutes each day, which is actually kind of a challenge in the winter. So have that bedtime routine. Think about your circadian rhythm. You should be able to easily sleep between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., assuming you don't have a newborn or something like that. And that is a key way to keep building your resistance and resilience throughout flu season, is training that circadian rhythm and getting high quality sleep. Now, there are some particular nutrients that have direct antiviral activity. Licorice is key, and this has been studied. These that I'm going to mention have all been studied specifically in the flu virus, although many of them also work for other viruses. So licorice tea is my favorite way to take licorice. I will list a couple in the blog post, but that I personally like. But any kind of licorice tea is key. Now, you have to be a little careful with overdoing licorice. It can lower testosterone and raise blood pressure. So if you have a problem with high blood pressure, hypertension, or testosterone levels, just be mindful of that. Zinc is fantastic. For the acute phase of flu, you want to be using about 50 milligrams a day for that few days, and ideally in lozenge form. So it's literally coating your tongue and throat area. And for prevention, you want to be taking about 10 to 20 milligrams of zinc daily. And you can take that just as a part of a multivitamin or in a capsule. An herb, well, actually, let's talk about this nutrient first. Selenium is another nutrient that has direct antiviral effects, and you can take a pretty high dose of selenium, 600 to 800 micrograms, not milligrams here, micrograms of selenium. It's a trace mineral, so we need a very, very little bit for it to be powerful. So 600 to 800 micrograms of selenium daily for just 3 days when that flu just starts to come on. Don't want to go more than that. Then we want to reduce to a maintenance dose of 200 micrograms a day, which is also what you'll take to prevent flu. Now, you can get 200 micrograms a day of selenium in just by eating one Brazil nut a day, if you prefer to take it in food as opposed to supplements. So that's another great directly antiviral nutrient. And then there's an herb I want to mention called Melissa officinalis, which is lemon balm, otherwise known as lemon balm. It is in the On Guard essential oil capsules that you can take internally. And again, I've linked to that resource. And honestly, now, while in the oil and some of the other products like hand washing and mouthwash and toothpaste products for On Guard, that they don't contain Melissa, they contain some other antibacterial and antiviral essential oils. But I essentially bathe my family in On Guard during the cold and flu season. So that's just a personal clinical pearl right there. So we talked about, so those nutrients and foods are directly antiviral or they're anti-inflammatory. So they bring down that inflammatory load, allowing the immune system to be more targeted to kill off the virus rather than being kind of confused in this chronic state of inflammation. And you also have antioxidants if you're eating this level of vegetables, essentially, which protects your mitochondria from being so exhausted. The reason that the flu makes you so achy and just like you were just run over by a truck and you're so exhausted is because your mitochondria are being overwhelmed by the process of the infection, the viral infection. So, and let me tell you about just a few other things. So we can block one of our own mechanisms of cellular machinery, NF-kappa beta and other inflammatory proteins, essentially proteins that are a part of the inflammatory process. by blocking or inhibiting those, then it makes it harder for the virus to reproduce. So remember, I said that the flu virus actually must hijack your own cellular machinery in order to replicate or reproduce. Otherwise, it'll basically just be shut down if it can't utilize that cell. So there are lots of things that inhibit that cellular machinery for reproduction of the virus. And we don't want to completely squash that, because we do want the inflammatory response to be active against the invader. But most of us are walking around with too much inflammation, not enough. So, you know, it's rare that you're going to overdo this by just using nutrients or foods. So one of the key amino acids that helps, this is a key nutrient that helps to strengthen both your antioxidant load and to modulate NF-kappa beta, is called N-acetylcysteine. And that is a precursor for both our master antioxidant, otherwise known as glutathione, and it is an NF-kappa beta modulator. So I recommend, if you are taken down by a flu or similar virus, to take 500 milligrams 3 times daily during that acute phase for a couple days, and then reduce it to 500 milligrams twice daily as a maintenance dose. I also like some products that are combined, N-acetylcysteine with glutathione. It's a nice combination to get some of the direct glutathione and some of the precursor. So again, I'll list those resources. Other nutrients that inhibit NF-kappa beta are fish oil, so eat your salmon. And lots of herbs and spices, things like rosemary, oregano, turmeric. Also directly, and I've been spraying this little throat spray, a clinical pearl from my house for everyone in the family, bee propolis. And there's a couple of great high quality bee propolis throat sprays on the market. Curcumin, which is just the active ingredient in turmeric, and again at high doses this is very powerful. And green tea, and honestly the best way to take green tea is to literally drink green tea. I suggest, because you're going to want to drink about 3 to 4 cups a day, that you go with a decaffeinated option so you can get that good quality sleep. And then finally, the focus is on immune building and immune support. So mushrooms are so good at strengthening and activating the immune system. And honestly, you can eat them and do it day in, day out, and that will help keep your immune system primed and resilient and strong. But only one of my kids, who, by the way, loves mushrooms, which is great, but only one of them will eat them. The other one hates mushrooms, although I do sneak them into all of our pasta sauces. So she eats them sometimes, or at least if she can't see them, then she does eat them. So medicinal mushrooms, any kind of mushroom. So you're cooking with mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms. These all have different mushroom-like properties. And there's a product that I use all the time called Immune Berry, which is a combination of medicinal mushrooms with like dark cherry, so it tastes decent. So I cook with and feed my kids mushrooms all through cold and flu season, and sneak them in as much as I can for the one who doesn't like them. But I supplement that with Immune Berry anytime we know that there's like viruses coming from across the street and school and the bus and all of that. So that is a way to kind of supplement the medicinal mushrooms that you're cooking with. And finally, while it's controversial whether vitamin D prevents or treats the flu, some researchers have actually gone as far as to suggest mandatory vitamin D supplementation for flu prevention. It's best to take a D3-K2 combination, so that the vitamin D that you take doesn't encourage the calcium to harden in the arteries. You want that D going where it's going to support the immune system in this case, but also bone health, not calcify in the arteries. So it's important to take vitamin D3 always with vitamin K2. And I give my kids fairly high doses. You actually, for adults, for short periods of time, can go as high as about 100,000 IUs. Clinically, I generally use 10,000 IUs daily for that first few days of acute. flu, and then decrease it to 2,000 to 5,000 IUs daily as a preventive or maintenance dose. And there are a few cases and a few medications you might be on where you would avoid taking vitamin D. So again, those are listed in the post. So the good news is that even if your family this season is surrounded by the ever-encroaching flu virus, and whether or not you decide to use flu vaccines or flu antiviral medications, all of these tools are very powerful for keeping your family's immune system resilient, for keeping the cellular machinery modulated so that it's strong enough to target viruses and bacterial infections, but not so much that it's helping the virus replicate, and just keeping your energy up so that you're less likely to be overcome by a cold, flu, or other similar virus. And another really interesting thing just to note before I wrap up here is that viruses can activate each other. So if, for example, you have a history of having mono or Epstein-Barr virus from, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and it's been kind of quietly hiding in your cells and not bothering anyone, being exposed to other viruses like the flu, getting sick, can actually trigger reactivations of other viruses that have been nicely, calmly kept quiet by your immune system for a long time. And that's important to know, because if you don't quickly recover from a cold or a flu virus, then you want to make sure that you're really taking care of yourself for several weeks, because it might be that some old viruses have kind of reared their ugly heads. And if you're fatigued for weeks, that's not normal. You should be able to have the resilience from an immune system standpoint to recover from the flu within a week to 10 days. And if that doesn't happen, then you really need to be exploring further that you may have reactivated some other viruses. So it's even more important to use these strategies to keep these viruses at bay. All right, if you have any questions, just type them in the comments below. I'll link to the post so you have more resources, and keep your family safe from the flu this season. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.